Here we go. Let's talk about fiscal sponsorship. Y'all can see that okay? Hopefully. Great. So, what is fiscal
Wait,
sponsorship?
I don't
I'm going to
see
assume
your slide.
you don't see my slide.
No,
How about now?
now
Now it
now
is,
I do.
yes.
Yep, there you
Great.
go.
Someday, 21 million will all figure out how to use Zoom. Okay. I am going to start from the expectation that you're brand new to fiscal sponsorship, but also move fast. So we'll have plenty of time to chat specifics. So I'm coming to this from a perspective of having been fiscally sponsored in many organizations. And then Susie has been a fiscal sponsor. So you have both sides. Um, a fiscal sponsor essentially is an umbrella organization that provides the benefits and also handles the responsibilities of being a 501c3 organization in the US, so tax exempt organization. Fiscal sponsorship looks different in other countries where there are different tax laws. I am coming from the US, so that is my frame of reference. Apologies if it's not helpful to you. Your 501c3 sponsor takes in donations and grants, provides receipts, and is responsible for grant reporting, also pays bills and expenses, and then provides all the government filings and audits. So essentially, your project is underneath a fiscal sponsor. And this is an analogy that I think about sometimes. Some fiscal sponsors are like an umbrella. Their whole purpose is to have people underneath them. Those are incubator sponsors. That organization, all they do is sponsor other small projects. Then there are others that have an awning you can stand under, and that is, I think, largely what Susie is going to talk about. These are organizations that are doing their own thing, and they will bring you in under what they're doing to provide some of those benefits. Some pluses and minuses of fiscal sponsorship. So the big benefit in the US is you operate under the 501c3 designation. And so that makes you eligible for grants, tax deductible donations, discounts, free services, all the things that 501c3s accrue in the US. Many fiscal sponsors also provide additional business services. There are some that they're required to do. There's some that they offer just because they know you need it. Any employees of your project are legally employees of that sponsor organization. So that means that the sponsor is responsible for payroll taxes, HR compliance, all kinds of stuff like that. And it can be a really good first step. So it can be sort of an intermediary step between a group of people hanging out and running donations through one person's bank account, and then actually going and establishing yourself as a nonprofit. There are some downsides. So all finances of the organization are required to go through the sponsor, because technically your organization is a project of that other nonprofit. And typically, not always, but typically fiscal sponsors do charge a percentage of income to cover the costs of managing the books and things like that. Your organization is technically governed by the sponsor's board, which means there's less autonomy and transparency for your project. You wouldn't have a standalone board that could make decisions about your mission, things like that. And that all really depends on your fiscal sponsorship agreement. Some are more formal than others. Um, Fiscal sponsorships typically offer some of these things. So they are required to receive and keep track of all of your money. That is the point of a fiscal sponsor, and to provide HR and payroll if you have employees. The level of HR is up to you, but they have to they have to pay payroll taxes, they have to make sure people get paid, that kind of thing. They may also provide insurance. Most of them will bring you at least under their general liability and property insurance because you are technically their project. But they may offer additional insurance coverage. They may offer receiving and acknowledging of your donations, and the amount of grant reporting that they do for you can vary, but typically they're the ones that are legally required to submit those grant reports. Sometimes you can also receive mail there, do printing, general office services, and sometimes they'll also have shared licenses or subscriptions that you can access. Believe it or not, that's it. that, that is my overview of fiscal sponsorship. I'm going to turn it over to Susie, and then we want to leave room for people just to talk about questions and
Yeah.
specifics.
So I'm going to share my slide. And again, my situation is I wear a lot of hats. So, I mean, I'm a fixer. I'm a jewelry fixer. I'm a repair cafe organizer in my little hometown of Irvington, New York. But I also am the coordinator of Repair Cafe Hudson Valley, which is I'll talk about a group of cafes. But officially, I am an employee of Sustainable Hudson Valley, which is a nonprofit. And they're the ones I'm going to speak about with the fiscal sponsorship. So here's what I have. And why can't I find my... Hmm. Hold on. I think I need to clean up my desktop first. Give me 1 second. I'm sorry.
Do you want me to share it for you, Susie?
Sure. Yeah, that's fine. Yep. That would be great. Thank you.
You know what? I can't. I don't have access.
Okay. That's okay.
Sorry.
Oh, it was not a PowerPoint. Hold on. Let me just clean up here and then just getting so ready. Here we go. How about that? Okay.
Do two speed bumps.
Oh, that's not me. Sorry.
I'll also add, while Susie's getting started, I should have introduced myself. I'm Leanna Frick. I am the co-director of the Station North Tool Library. I've been a tool librarian for about 10 years. I'm also the steering committee chair for the National Tool Library Alliance here in the US. So if any of you are tool libraries or interested in starting libraries of things, happy to chat more.
Okay. So
All
again,
right.
I officially work for Sustainable Hudson Valley. That is the 501c3 of which Hudson Valley Repair Cafe Group, Repair Cafe Hudson Valley is a program of. That's how we've defined it. So again, Repair Cafe Hudson Valley is a consortium of almost 70 cafes across over 10 counties in New York State. They're all independent. They're independently run, but they're networked together behind the scenes. We advertise them together. And officially, we refer to this whole program as a program of Sustainable Hudson Valley. And so this is just a quick map of the cafes, and you can see they developed up and down the Hudson Valley. Okay. So we have this year we really took it onto ourselves to become more formal. The whole program developed due to the passion and enthusiasm of a man named John Wackman. He was the one who started Repair Cafe Hudson Valley with a cafe in 2013 in New Paltz, and it just literally spread from there. Everyone loved it, loved the idea here in New York, and started cafes. And I think he was a former board member of Sustainable Hudson Valley. And so at one point when it was growing, he brought it to them. He brought the program to them. And that's how they developed this sort of loose, what they referred to as a fiscal sponsorship, but they weren't really doing anything about it. And this year we were like, you know what, as this grows, we need to get a little more clear with what we're doing. So we developed two models. Um, we don't charge anything, but I'll talk about how we do make some money on it. But so one is member cafes, which signed a member. Put that in the wrong place. They signed a memorandum of understanding, which we developed this year, and that then we call them member cafes, and then they access our 501c3 status. And there are 9 of 68 who signed to do that. So not a huge number. We weren't pushing. We just wanted the people who needed certain things to sign with us, and then everyone else decided not to. And then the others we refer to as partner cafes, and we're sort of more informally associated with them. Okay, so we provide to both levels of cafes for free all this stuff, which is just because we developed as a support for this cafe network. We're not looking to make money on them. We just wanted to keep this cafe group going. It was so fantastic. And obviously, Sustainable Hudson Valley is a nonprofit that works in the climate space. So that was our motivation. So I support all these cafes regardless of, I help them start up. I advertise for them on the global level. We do all this stuff. And then this is what it works for cafes that have signed with us. So they do get access to the 501c3 status of Sustainable Hudson Valley, which means they can officially apply to grants. We do then ask for a 5% line item for Sustainable Hudson Valley to do all the paperwork involved that for any grant that they would receive. But if you're not a nonprofit, there are many, many grants you cannot apply for, you cannot receive. So that's like anyone who wanted to apply for a grant needed to sign with us. And then we have also written in, if you need my help to help you write the grant, that's an additional 5%. So we get 10% of any grants that I would help write. But again, we're not charging anyone up front. So that works well for everyone who wants to do that. It also gives us, as Leanna had talked about, so And I talked to the New York Council of Nonprofits, and again, I was wearing so many hats. I really was motivated to keep this as friendly and easy as possible for the people who wanted to sign. So we decided, and I spoke with them, and they said they didn't care. We used basically PTSA or PTAs as a model, where they locally manage their own cash donations as like a slush fund. And they told me that there was no limit in New York about there was no like mandated amount that you could go above or beyond. So we decided $500 was what each local cafe could keep in their box or coffers, but it really shouldn't be in someone's private bank account. That is because then you're really going through like you should really pay taxes on it as an income. So we're talking about cash in a cigar box or a lock box or something that's in a safe location. And we talked a lot about trying to get more like specific about how it was kept, but people were getting very, so we're like, look, you do what you're doing, but you are in charge of that money. And you need to, if you're signed with us, we need to provide financial oversight. So we developed a very, very simple online Google sheet that is private to each cafe, but will be shared. So the cafes can't see each other's, but shared with SHV. So there is now an accounting system, and they need to be um, in charge of making sure everything is tabulated. If it became over $500, we said they would have to send it to us. We would keep it for them and then send it back to them. But they were also even allowed to spend money for things they need to keep it down. So I thought that under 500, we thought that was a very friendly, non-invasive way for them to keep control of their cash without having to be too much work for anyone. But if anyone writes a check or uses a credit card to make a donation, they put a memo. It goes through our we have separate accounts for each repair cafe that is signed with us, and then it can come back to them. Otherwise, you can't take a check. You can't take a check that's written out to Susie Fromer for the Irvington Repair Cafe. I mean, you shouldn't. It's not really how money should be transferred for something like this. Um, the other thing we offer as a signed cafe is we have a tax exempt certificate for purchases because we're a nonprofit. And we also have event insurance, which we were handing out to anyone who wanted it. But at this point, that's been our sort of carrot for anyone who needs insurance for the day, in addition to what the space is offering. Some spaces will require that you have that. You have to sign with us. That was sort of the carrot. Oops. And that's all I have. Those are my contacts. Again, this was a model that worked for us. It was pretty simple. It seemed pretty cafe friendly. At least I fought hard to make it so, and that's what we started with this year because we felt it was important. And so for me, I really tried hard to not have any negatives to signing with us. We certainly didn't want to leave lose any cafes because of this out of our big network. So we said we're going to advertise everyone. Nothing is going to change except if you need this little paperwork stuff that will. But basically, my SHV was like, if anyone ever comes looking for an audit, we need to talk clearly about the finances of the cafes that are really our cafes. So that's why we did that.
Yeah. And I will say that Susie's model is unusual
Yes.
in its flexibility and its low barrier to entry and its low cost. Um, Many nonprofits decide not to do fiscal sponsorship because that extra income, whether it's through grants or just a bunch of little donations, puts their total organizational income over the threshold for an IRS audit. So
Mhm.
in the US, if you have $500,000 in charitable contributions, so grants and donations, you have to do a formal review with an independent CPA who's not affiliated with your organization. So it can't be your board treasurer. And then at a million or more total revenue, you have to get a formal audit, which can cost $10,000 to $25,000. So it's important to keep in mind if you're considering becoming a fiscal sponsor, how that project's income will roll up with yours to make your total income maybe look larger than you're ready to handle.
I didn't know that. That's
So
interesting. We are below the
yes.
threshold. And again, like, the donations that come in that
Yeah.
day get spent on pizza right away. So they don't get tracked as
Yeah.
donations per se in terms of that income level. But yeah, it has to be the right fit. But this was like, we were there to support the cafes, period. So,
Mhm.
and they're our best known program, I think. So, I mean,
Yeah.
it's a mutually beneficial. But I'm as a cafe organizer, like, I strongly suggest you have to have insurance on some level, right? Whether it's
Yes.
from the base, I
Yeah.
mean, you can do it without, but I would never espouse doing that. We live in too litigious a society, and repairs can be a little dangerous. So, we have that
Mhm.
paperwork of the hold harm list, basically, which is the official Repair Cafe papers, the the house rules and stuff. But I think I think this movement is growing so big that if you are oh, it's all friendly, I think you could really end up in trouble and it would hurt everyone. So
Yeah.
I encourage everyone to be more careful than you think you. With such a friendly local, that's my
We
perspective.
do have we have a roundtable discussion about legal and insurance questions later this afternoon.
Yes, I am
What
not a
questions do folks have now? What are you thinking about or curious to learn more about in terms of fiscal sponsorship, whether that's sponsoring or sponsor? Yeah, go ahead.
Hi,
Anne, yeah. Mhm.
you can hear me? Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I am recently coordinating the Evanston, Illinois Repair Cafe, and we're sponsored by the library, right? The Evanston Library, but we do get cash donations, and I'm kind of curious about what other repair cafes spend their money on. I mean, it's kind of, and again, it's not big bucks, and it's all, nickel and dime stuff, but over the last 6 months, it's kind of grown to be several $100s, maybe $500 or something like that. Talk about that limit that
Which
we were just
again was
talking about.
arbitrary. We set that
No, I
arbitrarily.
know, but I mean, but yeah, but I was kind of curious what is a reasonable threshold? I agree, it feels reasonable to
Mhm.
me. But but we're not spending money. Like I know you talked about pizza, but I mean,
We
what do
spend it on
people
food.
like as you get these donations? What are people spending money on? Because we're not really spending any money except for the occasional like sewing machine needles and these
Mhm.
odds and ends, jewelry supplies, blah blah blah. So anyway, what are people like? And then again, we don't solicit donations either. We have a donation tip jar, right? And people throw them in, but we're not really soliciting. We're kind of offering it as a free service. So I'm just curious about the cash flow in and out of other
Mhm.
repair cafes.
Yeah, I'm curious for folks in the group before we chime in. What are some of your expenses?
I don't know that either of them are a cafe. I know Bonnie. She actually was volunteering at the cafe, but she's a baker. She was providing baked goods, which is it's a donation, so that saved them
Okay.
money.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, for instance, we don't provide food, right? I mean, and again, are people providing
Yeah.
food for patrons or
Yes.
volunteers or like
Yes.
what's the deal there?
Well, so we have 70 cafes, so I've created a standard budget, which I then I warn people. I'm like, this is sort of like an idealized budget, and I created it for a grant, but also to let people kind of know what they're getting into. In 1 minute, it says.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
food is our biggest expense. I would say that second expense on an ongoing basis is lamp parts, our lamp parts kit. Those are more pricey.
Oh, and we charge the patrons for those.
Some cafes do, some don't in our network. But either
Oh,
way, you have
okay.
to pay for them up front to have them on site
Right,
that day.
right, right. No, I get it. Okay, so okay, anything else? Like just maybe just a
Anna,
quick.
what is yours?
Yeah, so we actually pay our fixers.